So, Soaring in Half has had many different types of presentation over the years, from the sanitized version for a children's TV show to comedy and burlesque versions played purely for laughs, and of course the original presentation, P.T. Selbit's, which was very nuts and bolts and procedural. But there's perhaps no style of presentation that fits Soaring Through quite as well as that gothic, dark, horror type of presentation, fitting in with entrapping people in cabinets, saws and buzzsaws. A style of magic that was featured in a seminal series of TV shows called The Secret Cabaret. And the star of that show is with us here. I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Simon Drake.
Hello and greetings from the lockdown House of Magic.
Indeed, backstage at your very own venue in London, the House of Magic. So this Soaring in Half on the very first series, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, the idea of sawing a woman in half and not putting her back together was one of the early kind of tags or themes when we were first working out the sort of format of what Secret Cabaret was about, along with the sort of S&M references, the Mad Max, the fast-paced format, the vintage footage, the rock and roll kind of approach, which helped us appeal to a younger audience for sure. It was one of the rare occasions I broke my rule, the unwritten rule of no boxes, because that had become a kind of magic cliche that everyone did. And I was trying to, the working title of Secret Cabaret was Not the Paul Daniels Show, because it was trying to be something that wasn't on light entertainment television at the time. So yeah, so not putting her back together was that beginning. So it's the only time I ever did a sort of conventional illusion in that way. I think we borrowed it off Uncle George Cavari, I believe. Don't know, but yeah.
So there was no there was a box which you don't normally have,
yeah.
But also the thing that you normally do have, which was lacking in this presentation, was gore and blood. How did that come about?
Well, to be honest, my work with gore only came about with Secret Cabaret, and I'd done at least sort of 10 TV appearances since helping create the visuals and touring with Kate Bush on her so-called famous tour of life. So that was about 10 years before Secret Cabaret. So I'd done a lot of other stuff, you know, before that. And then, the gore aspect was influenced by the Guignol, which was a theatre in Paris from the late 1800s to the early 1960s. And it specialised in graphic and totally amoral horror. I mean, it was pretty disgusting what they did. And we took from that the hot and cold shower principle, which was the idea of doing light or enchanting things and contrasting to really unpleasant, scary, gory things, you know, and that principle, a very old idea, I think that came before Grand Guignol, you know, and so that was a very important part of it. And so basically you can see examples, and even now in my work, so there's a couple of pictures I've sent you, which are, so you can see the floating candle and the flower production that I do in my show still now, and we're in Secret Cabaret, I think, and then straight after the knife through arm, which is a really, you know, nasty, bloody thing, and very sort of masochistic, I think, you know, and pretty gory. A lot of people in the show sort of look away and cover their eyes and do all this stuff. And that might be worth saying that during the lockdown, obviously we can't do shows here, and I'm thinking of, we did this padlock, which was really good for magicians and collectors, a sort of limited edition. I'm thinking of doing the same with the knife through arm. I'm talking to people about that now as a way to actually feed my kids, but it'll be a pretty amazing, it'll be my version. There's a photo you can show, limited edition, which will be, and you know, if people are interested, drop me an email, and it'll be good to see if anyone's interested. But I've had loads of emails over the years, but I don't know if I kept them, of people wanting, you know, can I buy your knife through arm? And I kind of thought, not while I'm still performing it, but now I think it's all right. I mean, you know, yeah. So that answered everything.
And you mentioned the different sort of reaction that covering of faces by people in the audience. Is that how you judge the effectiveness of those type of illusions? Is someone cowering back in terror, you know, a better thing for the illusion than
Yeah.
someone watching it normally?
Well, actually, audiences tend to go quiet when they're really shocked. I think if you shock them in like a horror movie, like a sudden jump thing, then they'd scream more, or they'd more react more. When you're doing something like the footage you're going to show later of the soaring up the middle, the audiences tend to go quiet because they're just like, oh my God. And that happens now in the show. And also you get a sort of adrenaline thing. I mean, I remember some of the time when we were touring, we did some, the impaler and the soaring through things. You could almost smell a sort of adrenaline. There's a sort of odd smell. It's really strange. But people, so in a way, it's kind of like drug dealing. I mean, you're getting people in touch with endorphins and adrenaline, and laughter makes a different sort of endorphin, and fear and shock and horror. It's all chemicals in your brain. So it's
do you think people are so aware that it is actually just theatre that they stop themselves getting to the stage of fainting or being sick or anything like that, or does that still happen even?
Well, I'm not aware of anyone being sick, but there was certainly a few people fainting on the tour I did, because that was much heavier, because we had a big stage touring show, whereas my stage at the House of Magic isn't as deep, so I haven't got that much room to wheel things on and off. But certainly people fainted, and they either fainted or they fell asleep. I mean, you'd see that out of sheer boredom. But you get people covering their eyes a lot and sort of looking through their fingers a bit, and or just going, can't bear it when they see the blood thing. So you get that now. But yeah. So I think really people go quiet, which I see that as a success in a way. It's strange.
And what are your favourite moments in terms of Grand Guignol presentations? What are your favourite effects or visual images when you're doing illusions?
Well, my own stuff, I guess the favourites are Knife Through Arm and the Soaring Up the Middle. And from others, it would be David's fantastic buzzsaw, death saw, as well as Ricciardi's. And I saw Ricciardi's in Greenwich Village in the 70s when I was in New York on some project thing that never happened. And I went down there, and it was all sold out. So they let me in. I stood at the back, right next to Siegfried and Roy, which was bizarre, right? And I was very young. I mean, and we watched this extraordinary show. I mean, he was an amazing performer, and very melodramatic, and serious. And the buzzsaw was the climax, and it in front of it at right angles there's some tables. I think people were dining there as well. There's a long table with white linen on it, and they'd angled it so that the blood that came off the buzzsaw it was spinning went straight down this table in the audience. It just red blood. I mean, I looked at pictures for Ricciardi. I sent you one which is just him covered in blood with this really unpleasant picture. I mean, and it was extraordinary to see that. It didn't inspire me at the time. I never thought I'd be doing that kind of thing. Really, I never thought that, but it just sort of happened years and years later. So that was a memorable thing. But out of all of them, I mean, all of these things, I mean, in modern times, David's death saw was extraordinary, although not bloody, not gory. It was graphic or sort of cartoon-like in a lot of ways, because his audience is a family audience. If he'd added blood to that, it wouldn't have worked for him commercially. But that theatrically, I think it's fantastic. Yeah.
And doing this type of performance on stage, do accidents happen? I mean, you have buzz saws and you have blades and swords. What's happened to you?
But the most accidents. I mean, this is going to magicians only, but the worst accidents I've had.
Actually, Simon, let me rephrase that, because there will be some public potentially watching this. So don't do methods.
No, I'm not going to. Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. So No, the worst. Yeah. Okay. So
I'll ask the question again. Hang on a second. So
ask it again.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So
Christ, fucking amateurs. What the hell? We've been overtaken by killer bunnies. Oh, yeah. Carry on.
So, doing this type of performance with saws and buzz saws, it looks incredibly dangerous. Have incidents ever happened to you on stage doing this type of performance?
No. Next question. Yes. So, a few things. some of which I can't go into because they're to do with trapdoor and things like that. But let's go one that was really unpleasant. I sent you a picture of a guillotine, all right, a very tall guillotine, which we hired from a friend for the launch of Iron Maiden's album called Fear of the Dark, which the London venue, and they were fans of my work, and that's where I first met them. They hired me to do a 20-minute Mad Max thing. We brought in that guillotine because the one we used in Secret Cabaret came from the States, and went back there. And this one was very, very high, and it had a real blade that came down, and we had this. Oh, I can't go into that bit, but I'll tell you what the accident that very nearly happened that would have been horrific. I had a new assistant at the time. There was a whole team of people, and this girl, Delilah, lovely girl, it's her first show with me, and sadly her last, although she didn't get hurt. But God, it was so close. I've got it on camcorder. You know, I've got loads of tapes like that. I'm not very technically minded, so if anyone wants to come and help me transfer them, we'll do that at some point. But it's a moment of. It would go viral if you put it on the internet because it didn't happen. It was so horrific. So basically, you're looking at, you know, she's sort of standing there, sort of wiggling about, and I'm doing the business, and the blade's gone all the way up, and she just casually put a hand over the stock. Right? If you look at the picture, you'll see the stocks there, and then the thing with the blade comes in. She just put a hand on the top of it, and she just inadvertently sort of leaning on it, and then just took it away, literally a split second. The blade came down. It would have chopped off all her fingers. It would have been the most horrifying thing. Oh my God. So that was, I mean, it's on video. I can't access it, but it's the most unbelievably frightening possibility, you know. I don't know what we would have done. It would have been good for the album launch for sure.
And bizarrely, with this type of show, if that sort of thing happens on stage, presumably the audience almost looks at it and goes, "Oh, this is great. This bit, this is."
That's how we would have probably dealt with it. Like, I mean, you know, I mean, it would have been Grand Guignol beyond. You know, it would have been tourniqueting her arm and getting something round that hand, getting up in the air, and then closing the show, and they go, unbelievable, so realistic. Picking up her fingers. I mean, my aunt was making a canoe for her son years ago, and she was in this workshop, and she was planing it on a table, a plane, whatever they're called, you know, a piece of wood. And it jumped up, and her fingers went in the thing. And she came in. She was so strong, this woman. She came in, I was in the kitchen, she came in with a rag around her hand saying, "Oh, Simon, I've got to go to the hospital. Could you go and get my fingers from the wood shavings box?" And I did, and they were just the ends of her fingers, those ones, and they were sort of curling. It was just, and I took them like in the tea towel, and she drove with her other hand. I was too young to drive them. She drove, I sat next to her with her fingers, and we got to the hospital, and they sort of grafted them back on a bit. It didn't even look like she was in any pain. I mean, that was unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
To that story, I have no idea. But
crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. So you mentioned Iron Maiden there, and you invited them onto a TV show that you were doing, and there was a very controversial sawing through that you did within that show. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Horrible sawing in halves. Yes, it's done on an assistant standing spread-eagled with her back to the audience. I've sent you a couple of photos of this. And it was so disgusting. It was banned in many countries. You know, that bit was taken out. And the first photo you could see is me with Iron Maiden sort of underneath, you know, but in the background. They're really rubbish pictures. But and then you've got the picture of the saw, which is a cross between a unicycle and a circular saw, which had like a push bike thing. It was geared, so it was very, very fast. And this thing was aluminium, but it wasn't sharp, but it would be very dangerous, you know, if it had caught somebody. That was the scary thing. And the girl was sawn in half through the skin. I mean, I'm kind of ashamed I ever even did this. I just, you know, it went too far really. And it was using mortician's wax, and it sort of bits of skin sort of came out. It was really gross. And then the top of her was towed away, flown away, and guts fell out and stuff. I mean, it was just awful. It's on the internet. I don't advise anyone to watch it really, but I mean, it's a trick, but it was really gross. I mean, it was, you know, and it was, that's when I realized I'd taken the Mad Max character too far, and I stopped doing it after that show. And I kind of thought, well, when I started doing that with Secret Cabaret, it was a kind of send up of that hormone monster sort of, you know, misogynistic, you know, violent dickhead, really, you know, which we're seeing quite a few of in horrible videos of what's going on in America at the moment. And then when I did that show, I remember there were 1,000 fans of Our Maidens and Mine watching live at Pinewood Studios, and I did the blood, so punching a girl's heart out, and I had this fake heart in my hand, and I squeezed it over, and I went, "This is what you call tough love." And the blood was dripping down, and the fans were kind of going, "Ah," like anoint me with the blood of Drake's heart. I mean, and I realized they didn't see, a lot of people weren't seeing the joke, the kind of fact that I really would rather they were just kind of sniggering and going, "You sick bastard," as opposed to going, "Oh, bloodlust." And I realized they were taking it seriously. And that's when I realized I'd screwed up. And I went too far with it and stopped doing it, you know.
In a way, like horror films, there's a slight difference between the ones that are really graphic and ones that are slightly tongue-in-cheek and you know, have slightly more of the cold shower than the hot shower, or you know, it's not just hot shower all the way through. So
correct, that's absolutely right. And the American producers were just going, more blood, just we want more blood in that, you know. So you know, it was just sort of egging it on, you know. And actually, you're right, it should be a little tongue-in-cheek, which a lot of this other stuff was in Secret Cabaret, like the cremation, you know, setting someone on fire to get a light for your cigar, the little story, you know, which was fine because it was, yeah, as you said, tongue-in-cheek, and that mixture.
And the vertical soaring in the Secret Cabaret, there was that was.
I don't know how tongue-in-cheek that was.
Well, there was an element of sort of cartoony. Again, it was slightly cartoony. The makeup on the assistants, and
yes, they had masks as well, like everyone's wearing today, you know, and they had the big eye makeup. Yeah,
ahead of your time again.
Yeah, I suppose so. Well, that was an interesting. It's a sort of seminal thing for me, that illusion, because it came in part from a dream. So my dad was a doctor and a surgeon, and I'd had a nightmare of waking up in the middle of an operation, a surgical operation, which was based. Now that nightmare was based on something that happened when I was about 6 or 7. I'd been playing around with my brother in hide and seek, and I'd hidden behind this door, and we had glass panels on the Victorian doors in the house where I was brought up, and he slammed the door open, knowing I was there because he could see through the crack, and it hit the glass panel hit a thing that was there, some sort of cabinet, and it shattered, and this big piece of glass like that went down and landed in my knee, like literally sticking out of my knee. And whenever I look at the Shard, the building in London, it always reminds me of that piece of glass, you know. And anyway, it was whatever. I was wrapped up in bandage things. And my dad, I woke up at 3 in the morning. I mean, it was horrible, you know. And my mum took the glass out and bandaged it up. And I was woken up with my mum holding me down and my dad cleaning out the wound and sewing it up. I've still got the scar. It's a little scar on my knee. I mean, it was horrible. And actually, because at that time, I think this is in the early 60s, they were funny about giving anesthetics to kids, you know. And so my dad did a DIY job, you know. So that's partly to do with that illusion. And it is very strange how it all came about, because actually it became sort of valuable for me many years later in sort of years of therapy that I did, you know, that, you know, my dad wasn't really around when I was a kid, and then he died when I was very young, and he was just always working or whatever, you know, and he was sort of a larger than life character, and I guess you know, I remember, you know, my therapist, it took a few sessions for him to sort of get the point across, for the penny to drop, that there was me, you know, being horribly mutilated in a hospital, and my dad was a doctor, and my therapist says, do you see the connection? I went, no, that's rubbish. And it took about 3 sessions before the penny dropped, and I realized, yes, of course, I was trying to get the attention from my dad, you know, which is frightening in a lot of ways. I mean, I was inadvertently sort of doing my primary sort of therapy in front of 3 million people, 10 o'clock on a Thursday night on Channel 4 television. I mean, it doesn't get stranger than that, but it did me a lot. It was very good for me in the end, because once I realized that that's why I was desperately trying to get rich and famous, or whatever it was. I mean, yeah, I made some money, I got a bit famous, you know, and actually the first week was great. It was like an amazing feeling. And then it just becomes more and more annoying, as you can't go anywhere without people shouting out, show us a trick, Simon, or and people coming up to you, and it was just sort of barging in and just sort of talk. It's very, very weird. And then you get stalkers and odd creatures. You know, obviously it's good for selling tickets and things, but the rest of it is a nightmare. I mean, I know a lot of famous people, have done over the years, and worked with them, and they wouldn't say this in public, but none of them like it, you know, because they're so isolated, you know. And I mean,
yeah,
the likes of Kate Bush or David Gilmour, people I've known for years, they can't really go anywhere, you know. I mean, they've been in lockdown all their lives since they became recognised, really. And so it's a strange thing to sort of come to terms with myself, and through this Grand Guignol stuff, you know, that actually, you know, I just needed the love of my dad that I never got, you know. And then when I sort of realised that, it sort of pulled the rug out from under me a bit. And and I mean, it was, in a way, it messed me up, messed up my sort of ambition. I became far less ruthless and ambitious. I'm far less, and settled down in the House of Magic and enjoyed stuff here without being that gory, you know. And how, you know, I really enjoy the team here, and we have a great time. It's hard work, you know, but I don't need to try and get the attention of my dad, who died when I was 12, years and years before I was doing all this crazy stuff on television.
So that illusion coming from a dream, you have that image, and then you go, oh, okay, I want to recreate this in front of the audience, because I believe it was a new method, so to speak, at that time. So methodologically, it was you know, a development.
Yeah, I have to be fair and mention Jim, because it was his work. I mean, it was between us that we came up with stuff, but it was a combination, but his expertise that came up with that method, and
this
not mine.
Was Jim Steinmeier, who's a prolific illusion inventor. So another piece of his work.
Yes, I mean, it was a combination of us talking, that and the other chainsaw stuff and bits and pieces that helped egg it along, but he then came up with the method of that, and we did it. And yeah, I mean, there's a glaring mistake in it when I see it now. I'm not going to say what it is. The magicians can look at it. It's on YouTube, or you're going to show it, but there's a glaring mistake in it. It's kind of I'm not going to say. Let's see if they can see it. It's kind of interesting, but it's so kind of obvious now when I see it. However, in terms of a telly thing, it was talked about a great deal, and it did the show a lot of good. And the second series it was at the beginning, and the end is, in a way, it's a shame when it went out on Channel 4 right at the end with the credits saying, always voiced over again, next week we've got this and the other, or what's on next. You know, it spoiled it, because the picture at the end with the piano music, very gentle, there's the blood dripping down, and the on piano, just this dripping, and then the titles rolling. It had a lovely kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, you know, I used to practice dying, you know, the stunt sort of stuff. I fall downstairs and die dramatically. And in terms of capturing that on film, it worked pretty well. You know, there's, you know, spitting out the blood, you know, and all that. In fact, they show it twice in the footage. You can see it. They loop it.
It's a wonderful piece of Grand Guignol theatre and performance that I'm sure Ricciardi would have enjoyed as much as you enjoyed his. So thank you so much for your time and talking about the suitably horrific side of an illusion that has been around for 100 years today. So once again, Simon, thank you so much for taking time to speak to us.
You're welcome. I was going to show you a little Grand Guignol thing,
If you want to, that would be
need my Alice. I need my daughter to help me out with this. Alice, she coming?
Yeah.
She's busy on her tablet. I don't mean pills. No, roadblocks. Alice, can you stand by to help me with this illusion? You're not on film. You can come over here and just say hi quickly. No, they can't see you. See, there's the camera there. Come on. She's very shy. She's very shy. She's very pretty. She's very shy. Okay.
I'll wave, even though I can't see.
She's too shy. She can't see. They can't see. There's the camera.
I saw the hands. That's all I need to see.
So Alice, wait there because you're going to pass. So I noticed I had a sort of spot in my arm, so I thought I'd just try and get rid of it myself. With one of these things. I don't know what they're called. They're kind of like. So I just. Okay. Alice, I think you might have to pass me a towel. Right. Come in the shot a bit. Come on, it's Dad. It's disgusting, isn't it? Come on, a bit closer. There she is. There's. Hi. Oh, well, Alice, you could have got me a clean towel. This is like. I'll get some sort of okay. There you go. And it's like what you do on. What do you expect? Card trick. It's one of them, isn't it?
Wonderful, lovely.
Look in the camera and say bye then, magician.
Thank you, so thank you, Alice. Well done.
Thank you, Noel.
Classic assistant.
Take your rabbit with you, for God's sake, child. Ah!